Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome everybody to this new seminar at the Chamber of Commerce of Cantabria. I firstly want to thank Simon Gardner for his cooperation preparing this interesting seminar, Effective Communicating in English. When I asked him to collaborate organizing a webinar, he didn't hesitate to say yes. Of course, count on me, Erika. So Simon, thank you very much for your support. Thank you too to all the people who is joining us right now. I hope you'll find it useful. I'm pretty sure, really. All of this is going to be recorded. Now it's being recorded for you to see it again later in our YouTube channel. And we'll share the link in our social media profiles. Before starting, I'm going to give you a few indications to interact and participate during this seminar. We have the chat where everybody can write their comments. They are doing now, so it's so easy. Then we also have the questions and answers button to write whatever you want to ask to the trainer. This is the best way for us to organize the written questions. And finally, you can put your hand up and I'll activate your sound. Now you're all silent, don't worry. You'll have to click the left down button to open your microphone. I'll hope I didn't forget anything important. I hope not. Simon, many thanks again, and let's begin. Let's begin, please.
Okay. Welcome everybody to number 10 Downing Street. Well, all right, we're not in 10 Downing Street. We're all at home. And that's where I'm going to be working from. But it's as if we were in 10 Downing Street, because today we're going to be listening to that man who lives normally in 10 Downing Street, and we're going to try and take out some conclusions from the way he talks when he speaks to the nation. I'd like to start with my thank yous as well. It's very nice for Erika to say to me, thank you very much, Simon. Of course, I'm delighted to collaborate. Funnily enough, I have plenty of time at the moment, and my kids are grown up, so they're not a problem for me. And so it's no problem at all. I'm delighted to be here. And I'd like to say thank you very much, first of all, to those of you who are coming along today, giving up your time to see if you can learn something with me. And I really hope it's going to be interesting enough for you. And I'd also like to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all. I'd particularly like to say thank you to Erika, who is a paragon of efficiency and organization, even when she's not in the office. Very easy to work with, and I know that she's doing a lot of other things with a lot of other people, and she is very busy indeed, so a big thank you to her. My objective today is to give you a few simple keys to communicating information better in meetings or when giving a talk in English. I want to make it as simple as possible. Those of you who are listening in and who already know me know that I try to be as pragmatic as possible and not to make things difficult to understand or to try and blind you with science. This is not a course in linguistics at all. We're going to look at a few simple ideas that maybe if you work on them, they will help you when you're talking to groups of people in English. Okay, and to do that, as I say, we're going to be using this man, Boris Johnson. Sadly, when we originally programmed this seminar, before the date came round, Boris Johnson was taken ill with the virus, with the coronavirus, and he was finally hospitalized in St. Thomas's Hospital in London. And we felt that as it was not at all clear what was going to happen, that it was better to postpone. So we postponed, but here we are again, very happy to say that he's out of hospital, out of danger, and recovering. Now, I've chosen Boris Johnson not for political reasons, not because I'm an enormous fan or not a fan of his. That's nothing to do with it. I've chosen because he's given me 6 minutes, which is great for this hour and a half. He had a very clear idea of what he wanted to transmit. And because he's famous and very famous, I thought it'd be appropriate to try and take the lessons from the way he speaks to people. I haven't chosen him because he's good or he's bad. That's up for you to decide after we've watched him. And we're going to watch him twice, but we'll come to that in a minute. Our plan for this morning, or for the hour and a half, is we'll watch the video. Before that, I'll give you some indications that maybe will help you to watch it. And we will watch it with subtitles the first time in case anybody is worried. I would very much appreciate if you would give your brief opinions on the chat when you're watching, and even for a few minutes after we finish watching the video, and I will try to answer or comment on what you have picked up from the video. Okay? Then we'll look at the speech from my point of view. I'll give my comments and I'll try and point out some things that hopefully when we watch the video again, we will see things maybe differently, maybe better, and maybe understanding some of the things that we can and maybe shouldn't do. We'll see. That's the plan. Let's see how it goes. And if everything goes well, we'll have some questions and comment time at the end. Okay, so let's get started. There are 3 key elements that I'd like you to think about. Now, that doesn't mean they're the only elements. It doesn't mean that they're the only key elements, but they're the 3 that I want to concentrate on today. The first one is credibility. The second is what we actually say, the words. And the third is how we say it, what we call delivery. So when we're working through the video, we're going to be looking at these 3 things. Now, credibility. Credibility is based on what people know of us. And I'm wondering whether people here maybe have a slightly different view of Boris Johnson than people in Britain. When I talk to people here, they seem to think that Boris Johnson is a joker, not serious. Somebody who, oh, he's nice and friendly, but he's not a serious guy. He does have a reputation for being a little lazy, although I'm not sure why that's true. He can appear sometimes disorganized and not very thorough. But he's one of the most successful politicians that Britain has had in the last few years. He was twice voted in as the Mayor of London in a city which is always Labour dominated. So that, from a political point of view, is really very interesting. He carried the Brexit vote, whether you agree with that or not. It was basically down to him. And then he won. When he went to the general elections, he won a large majority. So from that point of view, he is relatively credible for British people. He also has a reputation for creating very good teams, and when people don't work properly, being ruthless with them and getting rid of them. So people think that he works well as a politician, and his initial credibility is relatively high. And that was reflected at the time of the video that we're going to see. His personal approval ratings were among the highest in the world. And he'd carried the Conservative Party to the best ratings that they had had, well, in recent history. So we have to start from the point of view that he has prior credibility. So our prior interactions with people, that is, the speeches that he'd made recently, the press conferences that he had made with ministers and with the chief scientific officer and with the chief medical officer, also came across as being sincere and relatively transparent. This was helped, of course, by the UK government website, which is an enormously transparent website with vast amounts of information. Right at the beginning of this, it was possible to see where they were getting the scientific information from, who was in the groups that were forming the or informing the politicians, who was in the central group of scientists who were bringing all the information together, and what information from around the world they were using. So I think his prior credibility here was very, very good. I wonder if he destroys it in the video. So that's our man, Boris Johnson. What we say. Now, this is one of my favorite little graphs. It just shows you how difficult communication is. You have somebody who, a sender, me in this case, and I'm thinking about what I want to communicate, not the words. What is my message? What is it that I want to get across to you? And in this particular case with this seminar, there's those key ideas to help you improve. And if at the end that's not clear, I've been a bad communicator. Now, those ideas have to be put into a message. Obviously, I've thought about what I'm going to say today and how I'm going to say it and what support I'm going to use. We know the channel because that's been chosen by the Chamber of Commerce. It's Zoom, it's multimedia video, screen sharing, and you're at the other end. Now, several things can happen at the other end. I'm a wonderful communicator and you can understand me perfectly. Or maybe your sound connection is wrong. Or maybe your level of English isn't quite good enough to be able to follow me. Or maybe you really hate Boris Johnson and you can't understand why I'm using him. There could be thousands of things that make you, as the receiver, somebody who doesn't quite get the message that I want, independently of how I do it, because there is noise. Noise is not just noise, it's anything that interferes with the message that isn't part of the message. And then you have to decode my message, and you can understand it the right way, the way I want, or you can understand it a different way, a way that I haven't even thought of maybe. So communication is complicated. And if I'm very lucky, I'll get some feedback on how this seminar has gone. So what we say, in this particular case, or in all cases, we have to think about the background. Why are we making this message? What is the history behind what we're talking about? We need to think about the audience. Who am I talking to? Now, I know that I'm talking to a series of people who are interested in, well, I assume they are, interested in improving their ability to communicate in English. So that gives me a lot of information. Probably they're of an intermediate, advanced level, maybe one or two at a lower level, more information for me. And they're bothering to come along on a Friday morning, which tells me they're motivated. So that's my audience. We have to think a little bit about the audience of Boris Johnson. A nation of something like 60 million people, 150 nationalities, some who don't speak English. and people who maybe are not happy about the message they're going to receive. Something to bear in mind. I always ask people when I'm coaching them for speaking in public to think of their key message first. What is the one thing that people have to go away thinking about? You can build around it, but think of your key message. We have to think of the timing. How much time do you have? What is the attention span of the people who are going to be listening to you? And that's a real reason, as I say, for choosing this particular speech, because it's 6 minutes. Short and easy to put into this seminar. The structure. Good structure helps people to understand. Bad structure confuses people. And that's something that you can learn very easily in your own language, the structure of your presentation, any presentation, whether it's 1 minute or whether it's an hour and a half at a scientific congress. Okay. The tone. And that's something I want you to be listening to with Boris Johnson. What is his tone? Is it authoritarian? Is it caring? Is he apologetic? What about the level of responsibility that he demonstrates? That's something, again, that I'm going to ask you to be looking at when we put the video on. Vocabulary. You have to choose your vocabulary to be in line with your audience's capacity to understand. Boris Johnson here is not only talking to graduates from university or people who don't speak English. He's got a whole range of people who need to understand him. And if you're asking for something, maybe you need to give reasons, evidence, justification. And normally, there's going to be a call for action in business meetings invariably, and you're going to end up doing something that maybe is going to take up a lot of your time. How that call for action is phrased and how it is hammered home is also very important. So what we say, the actual message itself, is very important. And one of the things I insist on normally, and it doesn't quite happen with Boris Johnson here, but there is to a certain extent, I always say, tell people what you're going to tell them. It helps them understand where you're going. I'm going to tell you what I want you to understand. I tell you my message, and then I will tell you what I have told you, summarizing at the end. Let's see if that applies in this video as well. Next one, how we say it. And this is the delivery, and this is perhaps my speciality. This is where I spend a lot of time helping people. Spanish speakers of English can have certain difficulties in adapting to the way that English speakers organize the words when they're talking to other people. And I want you to think about the message itself. Well, hold on a moment, sorry. When I say that, there are a number of things that I'm not going to point you to now. This is what I want you to be looking at when you're listening to Boris Johnson. How does he talk? In what way does he make it easier or more difficult for people to understand? How he actually says it. Afterwards, we'll analyze it and we'll look at the specific things. Those are my key points that I want to get back to with you. So as we watch the video, I want you to think about the message itself. How Boris Johnson says it. And if you've got a pen and paper, make notes as you go, things that you spot that you think might be interesting. And don't worry, nothing is crazy. It really doesn't matter what you say. You can put it in the chat and I'll comment on it. Because you can send your messages as we go, or we'll have a few moments at the end of the video to add things to the chat, and I'll deal with them before we move on. Okay, so we're ready to go. You've got a clear idea of what I'm asking you to do. Look at the video, analyze it from your point of view, take out any points that you think are of interest and that you'd like to comment or that are good or bad. Okay, so you have to work now. And I'm going to share the screen and put the video up. Let's see.
Simon, you have to stop the screen.
Okay.
And share it again with the video.
Okay, and here we are.
Not close the presentation, only stop the sharing.
Stop the sharing. Now I've lost that.
And share it again.
Okay.
Unless you were sharing the whole screen.
Maybe I was. Let's see. Let's go with this. How about this?
Okay. Yes.
Here we are.
Perfect.
Okay. Small technical problems.
There now follows a ministerial broadcast from the Prime Minister.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. And so tonight, I want to update you on the latest steps we're taking to fight the disease and what you can do to help. And I want to begin by reminding you why the UK has been taking the approach that we have. Without a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope, because there won't be enough ventilators, enough intensive care beds, enough doctors and nurses. And as we've seen elsewhere in other countries that also have fantastic healthcare systems, that is the moment of real danger. To put it simply, if too many people become seriously unwell at one time, the NHS will be unable to handle it, meaning more people are likely to die, not just from coronavirus, but from other illnesses as well. So it's vital to slow the spread of the disease, because that is the way we reduce the number of people needing hospital treatment at any one time, so we can protect the NHS's ability to cope and save more lives. And that's why we've been asking people to stay at home during this pandemic. And though huge numbers are complying, and I thank you all, the time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home, because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households, that is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk, or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and traveling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. These are the only reasons you should leave your home. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine. And you should do this as little as you can. And use food delivery services where you can. If you don't follow the rules, the police will have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings. To ensure compliance with the government's instruction to stay at home, we will immediately close all shops selling non-essential goods, including clothing and electronic stores, and other premises, including libraries, playgrounds, and outdoor gyms and places of worship. We'll stop all gatherings of more than 2 people in public, excluding people you live with. And we'll stop all social events, including weddings, baptisms, and other ceremonies, but excluding funerals. Parks will remain open for exercise, but gatherings will be dispersed. No Prime Minister wants to enact measures like this. I know the damage that this disruption is doing and will do to people's lives, to their businesses, and to their jobs. And that's why we produced a huge and unprecedented program of support, both for workers and for business. And I can assure you that we will keep these restrictions under constant review. We will look again in 3 weeks and relax them if the evidence shows we are able to. But at present, there are just no easy options. The way ahead is hard, and it is still true that many lives will, sadly, be lost. And yet it is also true that there is a clear way through. Day by day, we are strengthening our amazing NHS with 7,500 former clinicians now coming back to the service. With the time you buy, by simply staying at home, we are increasing our stocks of equipment. We are accelerating our search for treatments. We're pioneering work on a vaccine. And we're buying millions of testing kits that will enable us to turn the tide on this invisible killer. I want to thank everyone who is working flat out to beat the virus. Everyone from the supermarket staff to the transport workers to the carers to the nurses and doctors on the front line. But in this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together to halt the spread of this disease, to protect our NHS, and to save many, many thousands of lives. And I know that as they have in the past, so many times, the people of this country will rise to that challenge, and we will come through it stronger than ever. We will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you at this moment of national emergency to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In this series,
Oops.
I'm going to teach you about
I think I need to stop.
coherence. And with this knowledge, what if you could strengthen your immune system by changing your thoughts and feelings?
Sorry about
To
this.
be more present, to make better decisions.
Okay, we've stopped that. Sorry. Okay, what I'd asked you to do was to look at it, think about it, and do you have any thoughts now? Let's have a look at the chat and to see if anybody has any thoughts about the things that we've been talking about. Let's see, we've got some messages here. From my old friend Hector. Hector, good to have you along today. His comment, Hector's comment, is that it's easy to understand, a clear message, and a simple instruction. Stay at home to save lives. I would agree with that. The message for me seems very, very clear. His instruction was only 5 words. And it's obvious that you've picked it up. We have another message from Marta. Good morning, Marta. What have I seen? Good structure. Reasons, instructions, and another word here, which I particularly like, thank you, Marta, encouraging. It's not a negative message, although it's a negative piece of news. Felix agrees with that. And we have another person who's come across as a, I don't have their name, who also says that the speech has been very direct, very clear, and the tone very convincing. Okay. Martha again, also clear instructions, like a commander. Yeah, he is the commander. At this stage, Boris Johnson, and I would say that historically, this is one of the things that he's done very, very well indeed. Maybe it's to do with his personality. There are 2 elements to his personality that we could comment here. One is that he really believes that there are people who grow when their time comes. And that seems to be happening to him. And I think he thinks and is aware that this is his time, that he has to lead the country. And also, because he is actually a very good delegator, he chooses his teams well, he tries to avoid getting into detail. And that means that he can make his messages clearer because they're about leadership. So yes, he does come across as the commander. He's the commander-in-chief in the battle against the coronavirus. Jonathan, good to see you. Or not see you, good to have you along. Jonathan's come up with a very good point here. Very inclusive. And this was something I picked out to comment on later. He does use the first person. He uses it in singular, but also he uses it in plural. It's never you and me, you and me and the rest of you, us and them. It is always, I have to do this and we have to do this together. So it's a very, very inclusive way of talking. And as Jonathan says, he's stressing that it's a combined effort, that he can't do it on his own, his ministers can't do it on his own, the government can't do it on its own, the National Health Service can't do it on its own. Everybody is in this together. And he comes back to that message several times. And when we listen again, I'd like you to bear that in mind. Marcos, thank you. Simple. What I want you to do and how I want you to do it. Clear and direct. Yes, he not only tells us that we have to stay at home, he tells us what this means. You know, if your friends invite you round, you don't go, you say no. Okay? And what you can do, what shopping means, it doesn't mean you can go and buy some clothes. No, it means you go and buy direct necessities. Okay? You can take your exercise. You mustn't be in groups of people unless they're the people from your household. It's a maximum of 2 people together unless you're taking your family for a walk. Okay, and that's perhaps one difference, just as something I would very much like to see in Spain. This is now just something to do with the way we're living at the moment. It's not a problem for me. I don't have young children, but my sympathies go out to those of you that have young children and you're living in a flat and you have to stay indoors with your children all the time. I would really like to see that relaxed a little bit as soon as possible because parents and children could go crazy. But that's another point. That's a strategy for dealing with this. Emma, his message is direct and the need for everyone to be involved in the message, easy to understand. Frank, great to have you along too. Rhythm and silences are well done. Okay, so you're taking over from me and you are telling people what I was going to say later. This is something I'm going to insist upon later. This is one of my key points again. Rhythm and silences are well done to point out the key words and the messages, such as must stay at home. And the rhythm and the silences, the pauses, are very, very important. And that's something that sometimes I find is very hard for me to train into people when they have to talk in public or at meetings, when they're talking in English and English is their second language. Okay, you're doing very well so far. Anything else that you'd like to bring up?
We also have two questions. One question and one comment. Andres thanks us, you, Simon, and me for this seminar, and he said a very simple description of the situation without transmitting panic. However, talking about the consequences, advised with an order, stay at home, strong message with the body, tone, and the message itself. So if you want to answer
very good comments. And tone we haven't spoken about yet. It's authoritative, but not authoritarian. I think that's an important thing to point out. He is the maximum authority in the country. And he is authoritative and he is giving orders, but not in an authoritarian way. In fact, he apologizes, and this actually does fit in with his personality. Boris Johnson is a very liberal with a capital L and a small l personality. He does not believe that you should be telling people what they have to do. He believes in personal responsibility and the intelligence of people to do what they should do at any given time. So there is no doubt when he says that no prime minister wants to do this, he's telling the truth, which also makes him more credible to those people that already know him. Nayara, hi Nayara, says the message is very clear and direct and avoids scaring people. This is an interesting one as well, because I've stopped watching the news. The beginning of the news here in Spain at the moment is getting very tiring. We get the number of dead people every day. And I am not sure that that number, of course it's important, but whether it should be leading the news every day. So in this message, because he's not the scientific officer, he's not the medical officer, he doesn't talk about the number of deaths or the number of recoveries or the number of infected people. That's not his job, and it's not part of his message. And as Nayara points out, that way he avoids scaring people. He avoids scaring people. And certainly he's searching for the commitment from society. He's saying, please help me, help my government to defeat this. Sorry, Erika, did we have somebody who wanted to ask a question verbally?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. Clear, concise, and motivating from Amor. Yes, this is my opinion, so now you know what I think about this particular speech and why I chose it. Personally, I think it's done very, very well. It is very clear. It is short, only 6 minutes, doesn't take up a lot of your time, and motivating. So he's not just not scaring people, he is being inclusive, and he is motivating. His message towards the end is saying, we will win. Not that, oh, this is terrible. He does tell us that more people, because he's being transparent, more people will die. That's a tough message to give. But at the same time, he turns it round and makes it into motivation. All right, so we're doing very well. I'm impressed. You're doing it all on your own, without my help. Well, maybe we need to go a little deeper into some of them, and I think Frank's message is going to give us a little bit to think about, and this is something very important, with the question of rhythm and pauses, silences, and the word that hasn't come up yet, but we'll be talking about that, is stress. Yeah, Frank mentions it in a way, but without actually using the word, using keywords and messages. So there's the stress that we need to talk about. Rufino, a clear explanation of the current situation. Yes. Simple, easy to understand. A clear explanation of what we need to do, and a clear explanation of why we need to do it. And I think that's been a constant in government communication in Britain, in that they've kept the messages very, very clear. Maybe some people haven't taken them on board, maybe some people have ignored them, but overall, the vast majority of the country have a clear idea of what they need to do. Okay, we'll come back later at the end. And if anybody has any other opinions, they can put them up on the chat, or we can deal with them later, and you can ask me the questions verbally. Now, I'm going to come back to my PowerPoint, and let's move on here. So things that he said and things that you picked up. Let's see, you picked up most of these things. His structure was excellent. He was inclusive, he was clear, his instruction was just 5 words, and it was repeated at the end. He gave us the idea of what we've done until now and why we are doing it. That key message, it leaps out at you, and it is absolutely easy to understand. Then you have the reason and what the instruction means, the examples, simple real life ones, and the fact that the police will be able to enforce them. So he is laying down his authority. So, he said that no prime minister wants to do this. He shows that he understands the things that ordinary people are worried about. He gives the good message that there is an enormous government support package with all the problems that all the countries are having to make sure that the money goes where they want, where the support is available when it needs to be. He indicates that this is not permanent, and that's important for us. We need to know it's not permanent, okay? Because they're going to review constantly the need for the lockdown. He reiterates the seriousness of the situation, and as you pointed out, the positive aspects. He says thank you, because being inclusive, he knows that he depends upon you. And he knows that without your help, he can't do it. And he gives you a list of the things that we're going to achieve together. He repeats his key message. You go away knowing exactly what he wants from you, and then he finishes. How he said them. Well, let's just go back a little bit and think about his audience. I don't know how many people watched that message, but I can guess that it was a vast number. One of the things that I said at the beginning was that his audience is very varied in every sense, from educational level, economic level, the problems that they have to get through this, because some people have less problems to be locked up at home than others. Very different situations and very different abilities to understand. So I have the feeling that he judged it well for his audience. And yes, all of you said he was easy to understand. Okay, this time you had the subtitles. Next time, I'm taking the subtitles away. Okay? All right, KISS. No, I don't mean. I mean, keep it short and simple. And this is my first key message. 6 minutes to communicate the most important decision that he had taken as Prime Minister was absolutely right. The message didn't get lost. And I'm going to make a comment that I hope nobody will take the wrong way. When I work with groups of people in companies or individuals who maybe have to talk to groups of people in public or big meetings, almost invariably, they're going to use up more time than they have. If they have 15 minutes, they have so much information, they need 20, 25, or 30. That's very, very bad technique. You will never lose your audience if you use less time than you're entitled to, and you'll never lose them if you use less time than you say you're going to. Go over the time and you have a problem. So keep it short and simple. The first thing is make sure the message is as short as possible. But it's not only the message. He uses in that speech very short sentences. Some of the sentences are longer, but they're still easy to understand. But many of the sentences are short. And at the end of each one, he pauses. And this is also a key point that I try to coach people to get into the habit of. Keeping your sentences short, it's good communication. It means the idea never gets lost. But for a Spanish speaker of English, it means that it's much easier to be grammatically correct. And although that is not the most important thing in communication, it does help, and unnecessary grammatical errors should be eliminated. Short sentences help that. If you look at any message that you want to give, you'll find at some stage that you've got a sentence that is 4 lines long. Now, grammatically, it may be perfectly correct, but you will also have a problem with your delivery. Your intonation, your rhythm, your stress, and something else we'll talk about in a minute, your word grouping probably will not be accurate. And that will make you far more difficult to understand. So I don't need to worry about that with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is communicating perfectly. It's his native language. But when you are using a non-native language, a second language, you need to be as clear as possible, because you will have problems of pronunciation, problems of intonation, problems of stress, and inaccurate word grouping. You may talk too fast, which is another key point. So if you keep your sentences short, you make it much easier for those questions not to be a problem. You are making it easier for the other person to understand. And I will mention just structure here. Structure can help people to follow your talk. Linking different sections together, and that's something we don't have time to look at today, is very important to take people with you and to let them know where you're going before you get there so that they can understand you more easily. Short and simple. Keep it short and simple. So that's the first key point from my point of view. He spoke slowly throughout. And as I say, that's my second key point. I don't know why it happens, but when I work with people, everybody tries to go too fast. And when you ask them why, the reasons can be very, very amusing. I'm nervous and I want to get to the end as quickly as possible. I can understand that. I can understand you being nervous, and I can understand you not enjoying talking in a second language. But if you go too fast, you will make all those mistakes that I mentioned before. And if you speak slowly, you will make less mistakes and people will be able to understand you. Another reason that people speak fast is perhaps because they want the people who are listening to them to think that they speak English well. That's not a problem. Boris speaks English very well, and he spoke slowly throughout. Speed is not important. And in fact, I don't know if you noticed, when he was talking about the spread of the disease, he spoke more slowly. He was talking about slowing the spread of the disease. He used the word slow, and he spoke slowly because it was something more serious. It's vital to slow the spread of the disease. Many lives will, sadly, be lost. Just how slow can you go? You can go very slow indeed. Speed is your enemy. You do not need it. You do not want it. If you have to speak fast because you don't have enough time, look at your message and make it shorter. Don't speak fast to try and get all the message in. You need to change your message. When he had positive things to say, he started speaking faster. It's to make you feel the emotion, the good emotion, the positive emotion, and to motivate you. So he speaks more slowly with something serious, and he speaks faster when he's got positive things to say. So change in speed is also important. It stops you being monotonous. I want to thank everyone who's working flat out to beat the virus. Faster. Think about that when we watch the video again. He used accessible language. No difficult scientific terms, everyday words. He used contractions so that it's more colloquial. He said things like, let me see. And that's why, not and that is why. He could say that perfectly well, but that's why. Accessible, easy to understand. The vocabulary is carefully chosen. The person who wrote it, he may have written it himself, but I doubt it, chose the language very, very carefully. As I said before, short sentences. And I will give you the address, the link to the government webpage, where you can find both the video and the text of the speech. And if you print out or look at the text, you'll see that there are lots of short sentences. Word grouping. This is another key point, and it's very difficult to understand from a linguistic point of view, but actually quite easy to learn through just being told how to do it, listening to examples and imitating them. The way we group words in English is different from the way you would normally group words in Spanish. And it's initially, it's difficult for you to be able to catch the way we group words together. But in fact, with some very quick exercises, and if you are still studying English and you have an English teacher, ask them to help you with this. Use an example like Boris Johnson or any other good example that you can find. The wonderful thing about YouTube is you've got lots of good examples. How they group the words, where they put those pauses that Frank spoke about between parts of the sentence. We group words in a particular way. And if you group words incorrectly, you can actually change the meaning. And this is something I spend a little bit of time on whenever I do a face-to-face seminar, just showing people how easy it is that if you group the words differently, to actually say the exact opposite of what you mean. It's possible. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So word grouping and pausing in the right places inside a sentence is very, very important. And as Frank also pointed out, the emphasis on important words. And here there are two types of emphasis. We emphasize the important words in a sentence, and the unimportant words disappear to a certain extent. But also, you have to remember that a lot of what you think is bad pronunciation is putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. And we have to emphasize the right syllable in a word so that it's easy to understand. And that is easy to learn. You have to listen to a lot of English and you have to speak a lot. And if you have somebody who can correct you, then that's great. So emphasis on important words so that the important words are the ones that stay in your mind. If I ask any of you now what Boris Johnson's message was, I bet you could all say it immediately, which is proof that the communication was efficient. Pausing. I just paused. Pausing is an enormous tool. Pausing is something you should do when there is a full stop at the end of a sentence. People don't pause enough. Pausing is important for you because it allows people to think about what you've just said. So we pause after saying something important. If we're going to change the direction or the subject of what we're talking about, it's good to pause because you're indicating just through silence that maybe something is going to change. And for Spanish speakers of English, pausing is good if you're difficult to understand because it gives people time to decode your English if it's not easy to understand. So giving them a pause allows them to understand what it is you've just said. Pausing is a very important point. That's another one of my key points. Repetition for emphasis. He repeats his message to make sure that it gets through. He doesn't actually repeat things, specific words too much in this, but it is a very powerful tool if you need to make people understand. And certainly he does it with his key message. Summarizing or listening, he makes good use of listing here. For example, I'm going to read this. Without a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope. Because there won't be enough ventilators, enough intensive care beds, enough doctors and nurses. He's making it very clear why we need to do something, and he's done it through a list. Summarizing is important because it clarifies things for people. And in a sense, he does summarize right at the end. He tells you what he wants and why he wants it. Because it's not just you have to stay at home, it's because you have to protect the NHS, the National Health Service, and save lives. That's another part of his message. Almost always, if we're talking for work reasons, there's going to be a call for action when we are making a presentation or talking to a group of people. His call for action is very clear. He wants just one thing from everybody in the country. We all know what we have to do after we've watched that speech. Stay at home. Very, very clear. And he has that final repetition of the key message. Stay at home to protect the National Health Service and save lives. So let's put it all together. We're going to watch the video again, but I want you to watch it now thinking about the speed, well, the structure, the simplicity of the sentences, the short sentences, the pauses, the way he groups words so that it is easier to understand. The pauses at the end of sentences, the stress that he puts on different words. The way he pronounces some of the words which make it easier to understand them. So this time there are going to be no subtitles, and I want you to listen more as if it was music. That is, don't worry quite so much this time about trying to understand every word. Listen for the different things that I've been talking about and the things that you were talking about in the chat earlier. Let me see. I have to go back to the beginning. I've lost it. Let's see if we go back here.
So we can protect.
Right, let me just get rid of the subtitles. There you go. You're not having the subtitles this time. Oops. Sorry. There. No subtitles. Let's go full screen. So listen to Boris Johnson.
You have to share again.
Okay, I'm not sharing. Sorry.
No, you stop it before. So
okay, I need to share.
Share again. And let's play.
Let me see. It must be down the bottom. Compartir. Sorry about that, everybody.
Don't worry.
Here we go. That's the one I want. Well, there's not been too many technical problems, he said. All right.
Absolutely not.
Full screen. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Remember, we're listening now to the music. We're listening to the music of how he says it, his delivery.
There now follows a ministerial broadcast from the Prime Minister.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. And so tonight, I want to update you on the latest steps we're taking to fight the disease and what you can do to help. And I want to begin by reminding you why the UK has been taking the approach that we have. Without a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope, because there won't be enough ventilators, enough intensive care beds, enough doctors and nurses. And as we've seen elsewhere in other countries that also have fantastic healthcare systems, that is the moment of real danger. To put it simply, if too many people become seriously unwell at one time, the NHS will be unable to handle it, meaning more people are likely to die, not just from coronavirus, but from other illnesses as well. So it's vital to slow the spread of the disease, because that is the way we reduce the number of people needing hospital treatment at any one time, so we can protect the NHS's ability to cope and save more lives. And that's why we've been asking people to stay at home during this pandemic. And though huge numbers are complying, and I thank you all, the time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home, because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households. That is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk, or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and traveling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. These are the only reasons you should leave your home. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine. And you should do this as little as you can. And use food delivery services where you can. If you don't follow the rules, the police will have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings. To ensure compliance with the government's instruction to stay at home, we will immediately close all shops selling non-essential goods, including clothing and electronic stores, and other premises, including libraries, playgrounds, and outdoor gyms and places of worship. We'll stop all gatherings of more than 2 people in public, excluding people you live with. And we'll stop all social events, including weddings, baptisms, and other ceremonies, but excluding funerals. Parks will remain open for exercise, but gatherings will be dispersed. No Prime Minister wants to enact measures like this. I know the damage that this disruption is doing and will do to people's lives, to their businesses, and to their jobs. And that's why we've produced a huge and unprecedented programme of support both for workers and for business. And I can assure you that we will keep these restrictions under constant review. We will look again in 3 weeks and relax them if the evidence shows we are able to. But at present, there are just no easy options. The way ahead is hard, and it is still true that many lives will, sadly, be lost. And yet it is also true that there is a clear way through. Day by day, we are strengthening our amazing NHS with 7,500 former clinicians now coming back to the service. With the time you buy, by simply staying at home, we are increasing our stocks of equipment. We are accelerating our search for treatments. We're pioneering work on a vaccine. and we're buying millions of testing kits that will enable us to turn the tide on this invisible killer. I want to thank everyone who is working flat out to beat the virus. Everyone from the supermarket staff to the transport workers to the carers to the nurses and doctors on the front line. But in this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together to halt the spread of this disease, to protect our NHS, and to save many, many thousands of lives. And I know that as they have in the past, so many times, the people of this country will rise to that challenge, and we will come through it stronger than ever. We will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
And thank you, Boris. Okay. So, how did it go? Listening to it a second time. Let's see, there are some more comments. Let's see if I can check to make sure I haven't. Before you add, and I'd very much like you to offer me your opinions while I'm going through the messages that have already arrived, how you found listening to it for a second time, and if what I explained helped you to see why, in my opinion, it is an excellent political message. It gets its message across, why it is a good message and why it works. Felix said, it's the first message from Mr. Johnson where I can discover the first time a prime minister showing to be a competent person. I'm sure Boris would like to hear that. Giving confidence. And I don't know if it's the first time, but it's certainly what he does do there. He comes across as competent and that he's going to solve the problem. Credibility, integrity, and competence. Yeah, that's the feeling I have after watching that message. I don't know if he's really like that, but certainly that was what the message contained. From Roberto. Hi, Roberto. Good to have you here. The body language goes along with the message. Yes, that's something we didn't comment on. And I'm going to put my hands firm with determination, looking at the camera all the time, a serious but not threatening look without disturbing gestures. Simple. Yes, and he used his hands to make his point. And that was the only real movement that he had, but he used them very, very well to support what he was saying. And certainly I didn't feel that he was threatening at all, even though he talked about the powers of the police to make us do what he wants us to do. Jonathan. Okay. A message from Jonathan just saying thank you for the seminar. Okay. Felix, convince even more. Yes, it's more convincing the second time you see it. It's more convincing. I think that's, if that's what you meant, Felix, I would agree with that. Watching it a second time comes across as even more convincing. Okay, we're doing okay for time. Let me just go back again. Compartir pantalla, and I go back here. Just like, if you want to take a photograph of the screen, you have the links to the message itself, to the text so that you can actually see how short the sentences are in many cases. And also, I've given a link. You go to gov.uk and search for scientific evidence. And you will see there, one of the reasons why I say there was credibility before he gave the message, because there was a great amount of transparency. Even if some of the scientific evidence was wrong, what they were doing was giving us access to the scientific evidence that they were using to take the decisions, which means it's easier for you to be able to accept the...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a question. We have one hand up. So
okay, let's go with the question.
Yes, I'm going to the hands down again. Maybe it was wrong. One person put his hand up, and now I can see it. But we have another message from Marta in the chat.
Okay.
So sorry.
No problem. No, delighted. No problem whatsoever. This is what I want.
Yeah, me too. That was great, but I think maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he or she clicked by error.
Okay, let's deal with Marta's point, and please feel free to put your hand up and ask a question. For all of us, and although we're probably becoming used to it, this is a new way of working, using Zoom for meetings, and it's a little bit different. It's not quite as easy to interrupt and get your point across, but I'm delighted to look at these messages, and I'm also delighted if somebody wants to ask a question or make a comment. It doesn't have to be a question. Marta makes the point that he avoids using an too emotional message, and that she feels like an adult listening to him. That's an incredibly important point. And I don't know who writes his messages, but the reason, I didn't want to say it at the beginning, that one of the reasons I chose this message was that I think it's a brilliant piece of messaging. It's not whether I like Boris or don't like Boris. It's not whether I think he's a competent politician or not a competent. I'm concentrating on 6 minutes where he talks to the nation. And he avoids using too emotional a term or message. Yeah, I think that's right. And he makes us feel like adults. He's talking to us about our personal responsibility. I think that's very important. Very, very important. It's, if you like, the coding that I spoke about, the encoding the message. He wants the message to be adult to adult. Yes, it's prime minister to the population, but it's adult to adult. And that's a very important point. Marta, I think that's great. Thanks very much. This is here to stay, be sure. I'm not sure if Felix means that Zoom is here to stay, in which case we should all be buying shares in Zoom, or whether the virus is here to stay, which it almost certainly is. I don't know if Boris Johnson's here to stay. We'll see. We'll have a look in 3 or 4 years' time if he's still around running the country. Okay, anything else that anybody would like to bring up? Because I've prepared one other message that maybe we've, this way to teach. Okay, thank you, Felix. So I'm going to have to get used to working with Zoom. Yeah, I've been thinking about it. It's obvious. I don't want to give up meeting people. I don't want to give up, and I'm sure most other trainers have the same feeling. There is something great about being in the training room with people and getting your message across there. But yes, a lot of work at all levels, school work, university work, corporate training is going to be done at a distance, even when there's not much danger of catching something from each other. So we're going to have to get used to it. Yeah, if Erika allows me, I've prepared also the message that a rather more disheveled, untidy Boris gave to the country after he came out of hospital.
Of course, Simon.
As another example, I haven't prepared this. I looked at it the other day. You can see he's been ill. He hasn't lost that much weight. And he's obviously been suffering. There have been people who've said that it was false, that he wasn't really ill, that he was never dangerously ill. I mean, they didn't have to stick a tube down his throat. But when you listen to the message, again, I think you'll find that it's a message which is close to people's hearts. And it's certainly, from, if you want to be cynical, from a political point of view, it probably has done him no harm whatsoever. Let's see. I'm going to try and do this again. Let's go back here. Are you seeing my screen at the moment?
Not yet.
Okay, so I need to...
We only see your screen when you have a stop, red button with a stop in the top of your...
Okay, let's go down the bottom. Let's share the screen again. So yes, I need to learn about how to handle this more efficiently.
No worries.
Okay. Now, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, yes, I know.
Okay.
We are seeing.
Let's see if I can move this across. Right, and I think this is the one I want to be at. Okay. Here he is. You can see he doesn't look quite the same.
Yeah.
He's been ill. His hair is even worse. Yes, well, I carefully combed my hair this morning. Some of us are looking a little bit the worse for wear after being shut up at home for so long. I think hairdressers are going to have a lot of work when we all get out again. Let's look and watch the message from Boris after he's come out of hospital. And remember, think about it in the same way as you did the previous message.
The NHS has saved my life, no question. It's hard to find words to express my debt. But before I come to that, I want to thank everyone in the entire UK for the effort and the sacrifice you have made and are making. When the sun is out and the kids are at home, when the whole natural world seems at its loveliest and the outdoors is so inviting, I can only imagine how tough it has been to follow the rules on social distancing. I thank you because so many millions and millions of people across this country have been doing the right thing. Millions going through the hardship of self-isolation, faithfully, patiently, and with thought and care for others as well as for themselves. I want you to know that this Easter Sunday, I do believe that your efforts are worth it and are daily proving their worth. Because although we mourn every day those who are taken from us in such numbers, and though the struggle is by no means over, we are now making progress in this incredible national battle against coronavirus. A fight we never picked against an enemy we still don't entirely understand. We're making progress in this national battle because the British public formed a human shield around this country's greatest national asset, our National Health Service. We understood and we decided that if together we could keep our NHS safe, if we could stop our NHS from being overwhelmed, then we could not be beaten. And this country would rise together and overcome this challenge as we have overcome so many challenges in the past. In the last 7 days, I have, of course, seen the pressure that the NHS is under. I've seen the personal courage, not just of the doctors and nurses, but of everyone, the cleaners, the cooks, the healthcare workers of every description, physios, radiographers, pharmacists, who've kept coming to work, kept putting themselves in harm's way, kept risking this deadly virus. It is thanks to that courage, that devotion, that duty, and that love that our NHS has been unbeatable. I want to pay my own thanks to the utterly brilliant doctors, leaders in their fields, men and women, but several of them for some reason called Nick, who took some crucial decisions a few days ago, for which I will be grateful for the rest of my life. I want to thank the many nurses, men and women, whose care has been so astonishing. I'm going to forget some names, so please forgive me, but I want to thank Pauline and Shannon and Emily and Angel and Connie and Becky and Rachel and Nikki and Anne. And I hope they won't mind if I mention in particular 2 nurses who stood by my bedside for 48 hours when things could have gone either way. They're Jenny from New Zealand, Invercargill on the South Island to be exact, and Luis from Portugal near Porto. And the reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen was because for every second of the night, they were watching and they were thinking and they were caring and making the interventions I needed. So that is how I also know that across this country, 24 hours a day, for every second of every hour, there are hundreds of thousands of NHS staff who are acting with the same care and thought and precision as Jenny and Luis. That is why we will defeat this coronavirus and defeat it together. We will win because our NHS is the beating heart of this country. It is the best of this country. It is unconquerable. It is powered by love. So, thank you from me, from all of us, to the NHS. And let's remember to follow the rules on social distancing, stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you, and happy Easter.
Okay. How did that work out? Easy to understand? And did you spot there the same sort of techniques that he used in the other message? He could have done with some more makeup, the poor man, but yeah. It was clear, it was very focused, and it was very, very personal. And I think his credibility will have risen after that message as well. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time together this morning. I don't know if anybody else has any messages that they'd like to give or questions they'd like to ask, just very quickly before we close down. Okay.
It seems not to have any other question. Maybe in the chat, Felix tells us this message after to passing the disease extraordinary. I feel the same. It seems to me very emotional in this case, and I like it really. Was a good message and a good way from my point of view.
We have to be careful because remember it's a politician talking.
Okay, of course. I never forget that kind of.
But I do go a little bit beyond. I don't think it's entirely cynical at all. I really felt that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He has had a close to death experience, and I think that it's a positive thing that that he gives such a personal message after coming out of the hospital, after going through the disease and surviving and coming out the other end. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of him in the future, and I hope he maintains the same quality, in my opinion, of communication. Felix says here, we need messages like this one. And yes, I think what Boris Johnson has done, he has understood he's the leader, and that's his job. Okay. I think Jose Ramon may have left us. He says, thank you, Simon, Camera Cantabria. Take care. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we should wrap things up if you think so, Erika. What I'd like to say is that just thank you to you, particularly. I meant it what I said at the beginning. You're really good at organizing this sort of stuff. Thank you to everybody who came along. I really hope you found it useful. It's only been an hour and a half, so it's not been a major investment of your time. And certainly, if anybody does want to contact me, you can find my webpage using my surname, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to get in touch with me if you want. So no problem, and I'd be delighted to hear from any of you. And if I can ever help you in any way whatsoever, but delighted as well. That's what I'm here for. Okay.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's a pleasure
It's a pleasure for me to be with you all.
To be in touch with you. Always easy and always great. So
okay.
I can say anything else because we know each other very well.
Okay.
So it's
all right. Well, great. I'll leave you to shut the session down, and I'll just say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Goodbye, everybody, and
stay safe.
Stay safe. Yes.
Stay safe. Stay healthy. And if you do have any problems, I hope you get over them as quickly as possible. Okay.
Thank you very much to you all.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And a good weekend. Bye. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Okay.